Hi Prakash, we are live now, both on YouTube and Facebook. Dear students and friends, thank you for joining us. We have Prakash Iyer, a motivational speaker, leadership coach. But these are all very formal introductions for me. Prakash has been a dear friend of mine. And for me, I've always envied the career path that he's taken. And that's the reason why, one of the reasons why I wanted him to speak to each of you in these times when uncertainty rules the roost in a certain sense. Prakash used to work in Pepsi. Then he was the CEO and MD of Kimberly-Clark. And at some point in time, he took the leap of faith and said, I don't want to be in the corporate culture. I want to start something of my own. And became a leadership coach and a motivational speaker. He wrote 2 books, which are, in my opinion, some of the best books I have read, The Habit of Winning and The Secret of Leadership. Both have been bestsellers. They've been translated into multiple languages also. And after that, after he left Kimberly-Clark and started writing books and going around, really motivating students and even corporates, teams within the corporates. He was also the CEO of Mumbai Indians in its 2015 winning streak. And right now, while, motivating people like us, he also is an advisor on multiples. It's a $1 billion PE fund. And he's an independent board member on Xerox. Prakash, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us. And starting, comments from you before we take off.
Thanks so much, Mahesh, for giving me this opportunity to speak to a lot of young people out there. And to those of you who have taken the trouble to log in on Facebook or YouTube, I just want to say, I really appreciate the fact that you decided to spend the next hour or so with Mahesh and me. And we're going to hope that we can probably give you some information, some nuggets, a point of view perhaps, which I'm hoping will help you as you try and navigate what are clearly challenging times for us. So looking forward to this conversation, Mahesh. It's always a pleasure speaking with you.
Thank you so much, Prakash. So Prakash, as we speak, have you in your lifetime seen this kind of an uncertainty, either in your career or anywhere else, where you don't know what comes next? And lots of people have been saying before Corona and after Corona is what the world would be like. And that's too big a statement, but that's what quite influential people seem to be saying. So how does one deal with this kind of a world?
I guess 2 parts to your question. The first, of course, is whether I've seen anything like this before. And I must confess, I don't think there are too many people who can say that they have seen something quite like this. I think this is unprecedented, both in terms of its scale, complexity, just the fact that we don't know what's going to happen next. We don't know when it's going to end. And hey, we don't even know how it's going to end. And I don't think we've ever felt so powerless or so out of control. So the truth is that this is really a big one. And I think like many other people, I'd like to say that in my life, I've been through a crisis. I've been through more than one crisis. There have been times in my life when I've felt, gosh, this is terrible. What's going to happen next? Or like, damn, have I missed the bus? But I don't think any of that would compare with what we're going through right now. So I think truly, this is going to change the way we live, the way we work. It's going to change our world. And I think what's good to remember, and this is perhaps the lesson I would draw from perhaps some of the earlier crises that I might have been through. I think you've got to believe a couple of things. The first, of course, is that, you're not alone. You're not alone. I think one of the mistakes we can make in a crisis situation is to start thinking, God, I'm affected. I'm in trouble. Mera kya hoga? I think that becomes our instinctive response. Truth is, we're not alone. There are other people out there equally affected. And I think it's good to spare a thought for someone who might be even worse off. It's also a good idea to reach out to someone else who might be able to help you. So I think that can help enormously. I think the second one is to believe that, hey, don't lose hope. I think you've got to believe that this too will pass. And as someone once said many, many, many years ago, if it doesn't kill you, it'll make you stronger. And I think that's so true in this case. I think we will all come out stronger, better for what we might have experienced at this point in time.
But Prakash, see, from a student perspective, every elderly person and every person like me would tell them that everything will be all right. But for him, his target is something which is immediate, which is urgent, and for him that is life, right? and you actually see offers being rescinded, uncertainty about placements as you move along. Internships have been cancelled, so the learning to that extent has been stalled. It is far easier for a person like me to say, listen, everything will be normal. And that's what we tend to do and we want to do. But if you put ourselves in that child's place, for him, the world has crashed around him if an offer is rescinded. For him, his world has crashed if his placement doesn't go through. How does he deal with that? He or she, rather.
Hello?
Yeah, can you hear me, Prakash?
Yeah, I can. Sorry. Yeah.
So the question, I think
I got
what
the
I'm asking is, yeah, you heard my question? Yeah. So
I think this is interesting. And for most of us, the feeling is that when it happens to me, my world has come tearing apart. My world has come crashing down. What's happened? One offer has got rescinded, or one placement job has gone away. Mahesh, I'm reminded of something that happened in a one-day cricket match in 2008. And maybe there's a lesson in it for how we can all look at this. And I think it's India versus Australia, and it was the last over of the game. Australia needed 13 runs to win, 2 wickets in hand, 6 balls to go. And Irfan Pathan had to bowl that last over. And some of you might remember what happened then. He actually, got both those wickets and we won that game. And after the game, one of the commentators asked Irfan Pathan, what was the pressure like? How did you do it? How it is typically commentators want to come and say, hey, how did you handle the pressure? And Irfan Pathan says, what pressure? Actually,
I can hear you, Prakash. You can please go on.
And he says, what pressure are you talking about? As I went up to bowl, I thought of my parents. My father is a muezzin in a mosque in Baroda, and he struggled to put money on in the house. He struggled to put food on the table. And there were days when we wondered where we get our next meal from. And I know how worried my parents were. And I thought of how worried my parents were about getting my sister married. I said, that is pressure. What do I have to do? I just have to bowl 6 balls and make sure I don't give away 13 runs. That's all. And I think it's good for all of us to remember, this is not the end of the world. There could be 100 other things that could be a lot worse than that one offer not coming through, or that company saying, this offer is not going to work. Look at the number of people who take up a job and discover this is the worst thing they've done and they want to get out of it as quickly as we can. Look at the number of people who get into a job and then the business goes through a downturn and they get sad. So, lots can happen. So I think the first lesson to remember is that, don't try and play victim. Don't try and start thinking, yaar, main barbad ho gaya, main lut gaya. Arey, kuch nahi hua hai, yaar, ye to kuch nahi hai. Wait till there could be so many other things that will happen in your life. And many of them are, young people at the beginning of their careers. This is what you're going to go through in the next 3 months or 6 months, is really binge watching, a 60-year story on Netflix in like 5 hours. That's what's going to happen. You're going to see a lot. And that will tell you, what does this really mean for us? What does it really mean to be able to survive these difficult times and make it happen? I think that's really what I would tell all our people to do.
Prakash, in your own life or in your experience, you would have seen and noticed a lot of people, read about a lot of people. Do you have any, story of someone who's really failed or failed to achieve what he wanted to, but came out stronger out of it and then became far bigger than what his original plan was?
Mahesh, I'm sure we all know of lots of people, but who might have done this. But I'll tell you someone who I've admired a lot, and I know him a little bit, so I can try and talk about him. So he's this young kid growing up in a small village called Ramapuram in Kerala. Okay, but like all families, they want the boy to study well, and in those days it used to be, agar study well means engineer banega ya doctor banega, and this kid wanted to be a doctor. And studied well, reasonably bright kid. All the parents and the neighbors and the teachers would have said, "Ha, ye ladka mera doctor banega." And that poor kid writes his medical entrance exams and doesn't make the cut. And and he didn't even try for engineering at that point in time. I think so. He just goes on, does a regular BSc, then I think goes and does an MSc at in IIT Madras. and then gets a job with a small IT business, and starts to work. And guess what? That man grows up to, and his name is Chris Gopalakrishnan. He's the co-founder of Infosys. Okay. And we all know what that story is all about and what Chris has done and the kind of work that he's done. And, and not that it's important, but the kind of wealth that he's gotten created. Think about it. When he was 18 or 16, when he didn't clear the medical entrance exam, his world came, tumbling apart. And imagine if he had got through, he might have been, a physician in some village in Kerala trying to give people medicine for their flu today, rather than being the co-founder of clearly one of India's most respected businesses. So I think it's important for us to remember that what might look like failure for us is just a bend in the road which says, sorry, this road is closed, take this diversion. And our job is not to sit over there and moan and say, "Arey yaar, ye rasta band hai. Agar ye khula hota, I would have done so much." Our job is to say, it doesn't matter, this road is shut. I'm going to take the other road, but you know what? I'm going to enjoy the ride and I'm going to make something out of it. And the key bit for all of us is to make sure that we don't leave it to life and to circumstance and to the world to say, "Main kya karu?" I lost the chance. But we are able to say, hey, you know what? I made something out of the opportunities that I got. And I think that's the key bit.
Right. The other thing is, one is the placement offers and those kind of things. And two, a lot of students are branded as unemployable by our industry, right? And we come up with, benchmarks and standards which the student was never told. And suddenly we, when the survey after survey come which say that was 60%, 70%, 80% unemployable. Here is a child who has done everything that we wanted him to do. We gave him a curriculum, he studied that. We asked him to pass an examination, he took an examination and passed it. If you actually look at this child from class 1 to graduation, at quarterly, half yearly, if he doesn't pass, we detain him till he passes the examination and then moves forward. He's taken 155 examinations, Prakash. And then at the end of it, we say, listen, he's unemployable. We set the curriculum, we set the test, we set the examination pattern, we set the score, and he passed each of them. How does a person who is told that he's unemployable or not placed deal with the situation?
So I think it's a good question for policymakers and educationists to try and understand why is it that after putting people through an entire system, which has a fairly well-structured curriculum and which has, 155 examinations, if after that our end product is being branded as unemployable, I think that is something for us to introspect and to try and ask ourselves, what do we do? Okay, but I'm going to leave that aside for all these people in education to try and figure out. I'm going to look at it. If I was one of those students, what would I do about it? Okay, and I think the first lesson this teaches you is that congratulations, welcome to the real world. You have lost your right to blame someone else for what's happening to you. Okay, I think we are all very happy in our lives when we can find somebody else who we can blame for the misery that I'm suffering. So in this case, I could turn on and say, "Yaar, college bekar tha, mere professors bekar the, the curriculum was not right because I did everything they asked me to do." But that's not how I would look at it. I'd probably try and ask myself the question, so what's missing? Okay, what do I do? And I think the fact is that a college education is only one input into the making of an individual. I think there are a lot of other things that each of us can do to become better people. And maybe in our country, that's not seen as such a big deal. But I'll give you an example. I mean, if you look at Jeff Bezos, the man who, richest man in the world, and many people say the smartest man in the world, runs Amazon, started Amazon. Do you know that when he was a young boy, he used to be flipping burgers at a McDonald's restaurant, okay, to make some money, okay, to go through college. Now, it's not only about making some money to go through college, but it's also about learning to work in a team, to learn what does it take to become a burger flipper or a guy who's making burgers in a McDonald's restaurant. When you do that, you learn to work in a team, You learn to follow a standard operating procedure. You learn discipline. If it's 8 in the morning, whether you like it or not, and if you were supposed to report for work, you have to be there at work. Okay. Now, those are not things that a college would have taught you. And I'd like to believe that each of us has the opportunity to learn life skills. And that would mean working in a team. That would mean being disciplined. That would mean working hard. That would mean communicating a lot better. That would mean being someone who other people want to work with. And if you do these things, you will soon discover that people hire you for this and for the fact that you have a degree. And they're not making a distinction to say, Acha, you got 67% and somebody else got 63, so you're better than the 63. I think that's not how people are likely to look at you. So don't disregard the education. I think the education, the curriculum, teaches you discipline, it teaches you rigor, it teaches you fundamentals. It is, in some senses, a necessary condition, but it's not sufficient. And it's up to each of us then to try and say, hey, my parents have put me through this college. This college has given me an education which allows me, qualifies me to get that degree. That degree only says, wow, I'm now eligible to go out and learn more and do something. Don't assume that you've learned everything you need to know and now you should get that job which will pay you those big bucks. That's unlikely to happen.
There's a question from a person called Shubham, Prakash. His question is that his parents want him to go through a formal education and then get onto a good company, whereas he wants to study to ultimately create something of his own. You've taken a leap of faith when you left the best job possibly around at that point in time to become what you are today. How do you advise a person and possibly his family also of what risk-taking is and why life might not crash around them, what they think?
Sure. Shubham, is that the name?
Shubham.
So my first piece of advice, Shubham, would be this. If your parents are telling you to do something else, just because they're telling you to do something which you don't want to do does not mean that you should not respect them or not love them enough. I think they're doing this because they really love you and they want you to succeed. And in their understanding of the world, they probably think this is the most assured route to success. The truth is, we live in a different world. There is no single road to success. And there is no guarantee that if you do that particular course and then get a steady job, that's what success will look like. Okay. So I would argue that you should be able to pursue what you want to do. Okay. You should be able to kind of work hard and say, hey, I think I've got something else that I want to really make a success of. And that could be a business idea. It could be, I don't know, it could be an entrepreneurial thing. It could be just a different career opportunity. It could be playing drums and saying, I want to become a drummer in a band someday. I think what you need to do is to make sure that you do 2 or 3 things. One, don't take a path because it looks like an easier path. Okay. Sometimes we make the mistake of thinking that, yaar, mujhe maths nahi karna hai, ya mujhe wo physics mein, I don't like it. I don't want to study that. So I'd rather do something else. So our choice of a career is a negative vote. I don't want to do physics, so I'll do it. That's a bad idea. I think you must want to be a drummer because that's what drives you. That's what you want to do. That's what excites you. That's what you think you were meant to do. Okay, that's a good reason to want to do it. And you should work harder at becoming a good drummer than you might have worked if you had taken up a degree in science or something else that you might have actually done over there. So don't make it a negative vote. Make sure that you slog, that you work hard. Okay, but also be mindful that whatever you're choosing to do has a potential end game which will pay your bills. Okay? Many of us tend to have this idealistic view, that I will do what I want to do, okay, and I will enjoy my life. I think there is a price to pay initially, at least. You've got to be able to pay your bills, and your parents might tell you, you need to take care of yourself. You need to be able to stand on your feet. And I think you've got to be willing to say, I am committing to work hard to pay my bills, but I'll also do something which I am passionate about, which I know I'm very good at, and which I know is what I was meant to do in my life.
There's another question from Vanya Balla. Her question is that in these uncertain times, how does one go about finding a job for herself?
Okay. in not just in uncertain times. I think even in good times, finding a job is not really easy. I think you should try and do two or three things. The first, of course, is to try and put yourself out there. Okay. If you're trying to catch fish in the sea, the wider you cast your net, the better your chances of catching fish. If you sit there with one line and one little worm on the hook, and you sit in a place because it is comfortable, yahan pe to chaya hai, I will sit over here and try fishing, that may not work. If you have to fish, it might mean rolling up your clothes, getting into the water, going a little deeper, spreading your net far and wide. And therefore, from a job hunt perspective, you've got to be proactive. Don't wait for the opportunity. Don't wait that somebody will pop in an email into your inbox and say we've got a job to offer you. You've got to be out there. I think keep learning, keep reaching out. And these days on social media, whether it's a LinkedIn or indeed many other platforms, there are opportunities for you to connect with other people, to reach out, to learn what's happening in industries, and to put yourself out there and become a part of that conversation. And if you do that, I think you will improve your chances. Don't sit and wait for the ideal job. I think that's something else I would do. Many of us make the mistake of thinking, ye theek nahi hai, this job requires me to go somewhere else. I don't want to leave my town, or this job only pays X, or this job doesn't have the right title. I think don't worry about all of those things. I think you're better off getting into a job, getting your hands dirty and learning. And I think in doing that, you will set yourself up for opportunities which might open up after that.
This is a question from Shubh Sharma. He is studying in IIM Jammu. And his question is, my internship got cancelled. The situation is very worse. What can I do? And what should I do?
Shubham, what's happened?
Shubh Sharma.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Shubh Sharma. Okay, sure. First, of course, remind yourself, hey, I must have done something right to have got admission into IIM Jammu. Okay. So that's the good news that you've got going your way. Everybody knows that these are difficult times. Everyone knows that, internships, summer placements will all be in a mess this year, but people will understand. I don't think somebody's going to turn around 1 year from now or 10 years from now and look at your CV and say, oh, Shubh, you didn't do a summer placement in 2020. Is it terrible? I'm not going to hire you for this job. Unlikely. What they're going to ask you is, okay, so you didn't get into a summer placement. So what did you do? How did you make use of that time? What else did you do? What else could you have done? And therefore, I would strongly urge you to say, hey, one door has shut. That summer placement may have got shut. But how many doors have opened? How many windows are open? Try and put your hand in. What can you learn? Is there an online course that you could do, which you could say, hey, you know what happened in 2020? My summer placement got cancelled. But guess what? Here's what I did in those 8 weeks to become a better person. Okay. Maybe volunteer. Is there a place which needs your help? Is there a hospital, God forbid? Or is there a place where, old people need help? And can you go out and help them? Can you understand what it's all about to be able to help someone else through their problems? Can you learn something new? Can you learn a new skill? Do that. And don't worry too much about the fact that one summer placement got cancelled. Think about it like this. 10 years from now, 20 years from now, there'll only be so many people who can talk about the fact that I didn't do a summer placement, but ask me what I did. Okay. Everybody else will have to say boring thing. I did a project report on test marketing for lipstick in Gorakhpur. Big deal, yeah. Don't worry about it.
There's a question from Nagendra Singh. He says, sir, I'm pursuing BTech last semester. आगे क्या करना है समझ नहीं आ रहा है, बहुत confused हूँ. Nagendra Singh.
Nagendra, just repeat the first part of the question, Mahesh.
I'm pursuing BTech last semester. आगे क्या करना है पता नहीं चल रहा है, बहुत confused हूँ.
अरे क्या बात है यार, कंफ्यूज तो सब लोग हो जाते हैं यार. लेकिन जिंदगी का मजा यही है नागेंद्र कि यार आगे क्या होगा किसको पता है यार, आगे क्या होने वाला है किसने देखा है. हम सब चाहते हैं कि यार हमारी कहानी ऐसी हो. हम इसीलिए तो सब ज्योतिष के पास जाते हैं, बताओ कि यार 5 साल बाद क्या होगा, 10 साल बाद क्या होगा. छोड़ दो यार, उससे कुछ फायदा नहीं होने वाला है. आगे क्या होगा वो आपके हाथ में है और किसी ज्योतिष के हाथ में नहीं है. आपको खुद देखना है कि यार मैं क्या करना चाहता हूँ. अनसर्टेनिटी है, लेकिन उससे क्या हो रहा है? आप तो बीटेक हो यार, आप सोचो कि आपके जैसे आप जो काम कर सकते हो इस नए, in this new world, what are some of the places where you can make a difference? The world will change, and I'm saying this in the context of how technology will change our lives. The way education will reach people is going to change. The way healthcare will become much bigger is going to change. The need for people who understand technology, for people who understand how to change processes, how to understand processes, I think it's going to become huge. So you've got to be saying, wow, I think I've got a great opportunity ahead of me. Because in this crisis, right, it's not going to kill me. Nothing's going to happen. The world will change. And in a new world, people will not be worried कि आपके पास कितने साल का experience है. People will not say, अच्छा इस आदमी ने 7 साल textile company में काम किया तो he's perfect for me. People will say that, what happened earlier is irrelevant. I need people who can learn, people who have a fresh mindset, people who are willing to look at problems anew and say, hey, this is the new problem. I'm going to try and find a solution for it. That mindset will be at a premium. And I think people who are in their final year of college today, don't worry about the fact that the job market will be in a bit of a mess when you're coming out. Think of it like this. Somebody's hitting the reset button, and you, with 0 years experience, could suddenly be vying for jobs with people who might have had 5 years of experience, which is now proven to be irrelevant. So you with 0 will be competing with someone with 5. So you are at an advantage. You have less to unlearn. You have less to worry about saying that, you will not come into an organization and say, हमारे company में ना ऐसा होता था, वहाँ पे ना इतना अच्छा था. कुछ नहीं है. You will come with fresh eyes, and I think you'll be in a better place to crack that job opportunity.
Prakash, your friend Harsha Bogle, he's an IIM guy and then chose to be a commentator. And you told me this story sometime back. Can you just, because we're all talking of, taking risks and also choosing alternate pathways for your own, career options. Can you just recite or tell us what exactly the story is of how Harsha became what he is today?
I think in many ways, if you think of a career for an Indian today, Harsha Bogle probably epitomizes what a dream job looks like. For many people, that's really what it's all about. But I think it's interesting. So Harsha's played some cricket as a young kid, played in Osmania University. I think he played alongside Azharuddin in those days, if I remember correctly. And was always very passionate about cricket, but also studied. His parents are both, comes from a very studious, intellectual kind of family. If I remember right, mom's a professor. I think both parents were PhDs, if I remember correctly. And here's this kid, goes to Osmania, becomes an engineer, gets admission into IIM Ahmedabad. But there is this little passion inside about wanting to be a commentator, okay? So one day he just walked in when he was in Hyderabad, walked into All India Radio Studios and says, I want to audition, and says, let me become a commentator. And then even when he's studying at IIM Ahmedabad, I distinctly remember having chai with him outside at the tapri outside the institute, where he's got an invitation to go and become a commentator for an India International versus West Indies, if I remember right. But he has also an examination in IIM Ahmedabad the next day, or which is clashing with the game. And the director of the institute lets him go and says, Jao, go do this and come. So I think it's important for you to be able to say that, hey, the education makes you something. The education will open up some doors for you, but it does not mean that if you're a chemical engineer or if you have an MBA in marketing, you necessarily need a career which will only be there. I think these are really, they make you a better person. They make you a more interesting person. They teach you some very strong skills, which could also be on how do you think, but never lose sight of that dream. What's that dream that you have? And for him, I remember he then went to work in advertising. He used to work for an advertising agency called Rediffusion. Okay. And like many of us, I remember I was doing my summer placement in Bombay at that time, and he was working for Rediffusion. And we would take the same BST bus in Mumbai to go back from Worli to where he stayed in Mumbai. And here we go. Nothing stopped him from continuing to chase his passions. He gets a chance to do some work on television and in fact, for a company that Sunil Gavaskar started at that time. The money is not too good, but he gets that because it's what he's passionate about. So I think this, long story short, don't disregard education. Okay, don't disregard education. Respect education. It will teach you something. It will make you a better person. But don't use that as a crutch for the rest of your life. Don't use that as a shackles which says, "मैंने तो metallurgical engineering किया है, so my future lies in iron and metal and ore." Not necessary. If you have a dream, keep that dream alive. If you've got a little fire inside you, thoda sa tel dalte raho so that the flame stays intact. And who knows where it might take you someday. You know.
This is a question from Nitin. His question is, all the examinations are postponed. How do you keep yourself motivated to continue studying for an examination which has an uncertain date? And what about picking at the right time? Because you don't know what is the right time.
You should try and look at a lot of people, and if you look at sports teams, you will find, and if I take an example from, let's say, a team like any of the IPL teams, you've got a Mumbai Indians. There are something like 25 people who are in the team, okay? And yet typically you will find there are those 11 people who are playing most games, and maybe there are 2 or 3 or 4 people who could also potentially be in the mix. So there's like a 14 or a 15 people. What if you're one of those other 10 people who are part of Mumbai Indians but not getting a chance in the playing 11, right? I think you can't be brooding over the fact that mere ko chance nahi mil raha hai. I don't know when I will get a chance, and therefore I'm going to goof off and waste my time doing other things. I think you've got to stay fit, and you've got to be fit and ready and waiting for the day when you might get a chance. Because when you get that chance, you've got to make the most of that chance. So I think in a situation where you don't know when the exams will be, there's uncertainty, you don't know when it'll happen, don't obsess with the uncertainty. Recognize that and tell yourself that at any point in time, I know that I will have whatever, a 2-week window or a 4-week window before the exam get announced. And I will be prepared enough to say that those 4 weeks, I will take care of it. But in the meantime, don't waste the time that you have. I think it's important for you to find things to learn, things to do, keep yourself busy, challenge yourself. And even if it's staying within or close to your curriculum, try and find other allied courses and say, let me learn something new. Let me learn something different. And maybe that is what will make a difference eventually in your career. It may not really be just the curriculum that you followed in college.
This is a question from Tanay Bhilare. His question is, I just passed my 12th exams, but I'm really confused what to choose. Whose guidance should I follow?
I think, Tanay, 12th standard pass, whose guidance should I follow? First, of course, ask yourself, what do you want to do? Okay. Try and ask yourself, what do you want to do? And now don't come up with an idealistic answer which says, I will want to be something, and then you've never done anything in that. I think it's a good idea to ask yourself, get a sense of what are your strengths? What have you done? Get a sense of what makes you happy. What do you enjoy doing? Take a look at what does the future look like? 10 years from now, 20 years from now, what's the world going to need? What are the kind of roles the world will need? And then try and say, hey, how do I fit into all of this? A good idea is to ask for help, ask for advice from people who might know you. And you might want to start with that little disclaimer which says, when I'm asking for advice, it doesn't guarantee that I will listen to what you tell me. Okay, I'm only asking for advice. But look for advice, look for help. Talk to people who you might respect. Talk to people who might have walked that path. Do you see someone who you feel, I wish when I grow up, I could be like him? Okay. So find a role model or a mentor of sorts and try and reach out and say, hey, how can I do something to get there? That might help.
This is a question from Javed. How to motivate ourselves after getting rejected in all the interviews?
How to motivate ourselves after getting rejected in all interviews?
How to keep ourselves motivated?
Sure.
Despite many rejections.
Yeah. Javed, what you must do is to just go out and check out a man called Marwan Attapattu. Okay, Marwan Attapattu was this cricketer who you probably remember played for Sri Lanka. It's interesting, it took him something like 7 years and 4 test matches to score his second run in test cricket. So he makes his debut for Sri Lanka, scores 0-0, gets dropped. Okay. They bring him back after a year and a half to play again. And this time he does slightly better. He scores 0 and 1. And they drop him again. Goes back, you could imagine he must be feeling like, gosh, man, I'm a failure. Maybe I should stop playing cricket and go and become a banker or, find a job with Sri Lankan Airlines or something like that. He doesn't do that. He goes back, practices, more net practice, becomes a better batsman, comes back after 3 years, again gets a chance, scores 0 and 0. Okay? Dropped again. And then after goes back, still scores a lot of runs. And again, after a couple of years, gets a recall. And this time he goes on to score, I think, a 40 or a 50 in that innings, retains his place in the team. And then, has a career where he scores something like 16 centuries for Sri Lanka, goes on to become captain of Sri Lanka. So I think the reason I'm telling you Marwan Attapattu's story is this, that it's easy to start thinking, I'm a failure, I should do something else now. Maybe I'm not cut out for this. But I think it's times when you're tested like this, that you've got to back yourself and say, you know what, I'm a good guy. I will work hard. I will get better. And if I get better, I'm sure I'm likely to find success. So one of the things you should do is not just say, itne sare interviews mein gaya and मैं reject ho gaya. Kyun reject hua? Was the job right for you? Did you do something wrong? Where were you short? And I think it's a good idea to be able to say, how can I get better? So before you go for the next interview, you might want to ask yourself the question, how have I got better from the last time when I went for an interview? And if you get a mindset which starts saying that I must get better, even a little bit better, 1% better is enough, but I must get better. Most of us, when we start seeing rejection in interviews and we don't introspect, we don't try and ask ourselves what happened, we are actually getting worse with every interview because we're not learning anything new and our confidence is taking a beating. The minute you start getting better, you'll also start feeling more confident. Put yourself in job, volunteer to do something, try and learn something new, get new skills. And I think you'll start feeling that you're better now and that you're better placed to be able to crack the next interview. Also, maybe ask for help. Reach out to people and say, hey, this is what happened. Tell me, what can I do differently? Okay. And be open to doing things differently. Sometimes most of us think that main to aisa hu, take it or leave it. I'm like this. That's not a great attitude to have. I think you've got to be willing to change and you've got to be willing to get better. I hope that helps, Javed. And good luck with the next one. And I think, again, if I go back to your cricketing analogy, Javed, it doesn't matter what you scored in the previous innings. Next time when you start, you're starting from the first ball and you have as good a chance as anyone else to score 100. So don't worry that I was out previous time for the first ball. Don't worry.
That's a brilliant one. That's a brilliant one, Prakash. Thanks so much for that. This is a question from Om Maheshwari. He's from family which has a business background. They are insisting that he must do MBA. And the question he has is, after MBA, should he join the family business or should he do a job? Om Maheshwari.
Om, you're a lucky man. Family business and an opportunity to go back and build it and make it bigger. And a family, of course, which is supporting you and wants you to do well and wants you to do an MBA. So my advice to you would be to try and tell your family, the parents, and whoever else matters, that I think it's a great idea for me to go and do an MBA because I think I'll learn something new and I'll be able to bring in new knowledge, new thinking into our business. But I'd like you to consider my MBA as not as a 2-year MBA, but as a 5-year MBA. What I want to do is to study for 2 years and then work for 3 years outside. I want to work in an organization which is different, where there are other people, where I'm answerable. I'm not the Malik ka ladka, okay, where everybody look at me and say, Ji sir, haan ji sir, aap jo kahoge sir. I want to go through and understand what is it to be an employee in an organization. I want to work for a good business, so I learn what is best practice in good businesses. Because then when I come back to our business, I think I'll be better placed to do that. So maybe that's the way you should handle it.
This is a question from Maliha Haider. The question is, I've recently graduated as an interior designer with a gold medal from Jadavpur University. I think JU she said, so I'm assuming it to be Jadavpur University. Now, shall I opt for MBA to prosper my business, or currently I'm freelancing? What should I do?
Okay, I think one of the things that happens to a lot of young people is they are very quick to try and ask the question, what should I do? Okay, and they want to answer the question, what should I do? Maybe the question you must try and answer first is, what do I want? Okay, why am I looking at this option? What does success for me look like? Okay, and I think if you answer that question, you'll probably find that that's giving you some pointers on whether you want to do an MBA. Because if you're an interior designer, what excites you? If you're really excited by being able to create these new spaces, to try and create designs which will blow everybody's minds, if you're in, about making the world a better place, if you're about making homes look better, about workplaces look different, maybe it's the creative part of it which you enjoy, then you may not really want to do an MBA. And maybe there are other short-term programs that can help you to get the skills that an MBA might offer. So if you ask me the question, I don't think from what you've just said, you need to worry about rushing into an MBA. I would ask you to go work for a couple of years, understand the nuts and bolts of interior design. What does it mean for you? What is it that you like about it? And if you then discover that what you really want to do is build out India's finest interior design business, and you want to understand how do you raise money for it, and you want to understand how do you market it, and you want to understand how do you hire people to make it work, then you're saying, I don't want to be a great interior designer. I want to build an interior design business. That might be a good time to then say, maybe look at doing an MBA.
This is a question from Vishal Dev Kadam. Sir, I'm an engineer of 2016 batch. This year I tried for an MBA. I have a gap of 1 year already, and the MBA examination did not go well. So he's 2016 pass out. He took 1 year gap this year and tried to prepare for MBA. The examination did not go well. What should he do?
Yeah. So I would quickly urge you to go back to work somewhere. Try and find a job, go back to work, and then continue to apply for an MBA next year. I'm not a Vishal, I'm not a big fan of this idea of taking a year off to study for an MBA entrance exam. Okay, I think I hate to say it, but I think many of us take this cop out. Okay, I can't study and work together, and बहुत काम है, बहुत pressure होता है. I think if you look at successful people around the world, you will find that they've spent far more time trying to get it right. Forget this. If you look at entrepreneurs who build successful businesses, there are people who for those early years of that business would have slept for 4 hours a day, 5 hours a day, get up early morning, work till late night, or have a day job and then work after work hours on their business idea. That's what makes you successful. Forget about just the MBA entrance. That work ethic will stand you in good stead. This ability to push yourself even when you think your tank is running on empty, that will make you a better person. So I would strongly urge you, and I would strongly urge those of you who are contemplating, a gap year to study for an entrance exam. I'd say, you know what? I'll challenge you. Don't do it. Okay, stay with your job. Push yourself. It might mean less time with friends. It might mean watching fewer TikTok videos. It might mean watching a little less of television. Those are the sacrifices you should make, but you should try and say, I will keep that job because I'm learning something on the job. I'm still in a work environment. I'm going to learn something, and I'm going to try and say, hey, how can I study and then do the exam? So in your specific case, try and get back to work quickly and appear for the exam again. I'm sure success will come soon.
So I'm now trying to club 2-3 questions that have come around interviews, Prakash. One is Mrs. Rao, who says that she's 15 years work ex, but is still scared of facing interviews. There's another one who's a student, I forgot the name, who says, give me some tips to face an interview. So do you have 3 things that you would advise a student of how to deal with an interview in that sense?
Okay. I think the first thing to remember is that this is not the end of the world. It's as much a chance for that company to hire a good candidate as much as it's a chance for you to get that job. Okay. So I think take the pressure off. I think some of us put too much pressure on ourselves for an interview and we start thinking, oh my God. Okay. I don't think people get hired for a job because they had answers to all the questions. Okay. So don't worry. This thing about मेरा कल interview है, so I'm trying to study or read up today so that I can answer questions tomorrow. What you know is what you know. Okay. I think you are better off spending that time thinking of what do you know, what makes you the person you are, What is it that drives you to success? What are some of the things that you might have done in your life that are evidence of what you're capable of doing? Okay. I think we have two problems in our life. The first is that we get too caught up in the right answer, textbooks, mugging up, answering the question. That's not really what prizes in life are. Sometimes you get a job because you were able to say at the right moment, I don't know the answer, but you know what? I think I can find out what the answer is. Okay. And I think increasingly, organizations are not looking for people who have the answers, but they're looking for the kind of minds which are capable of finding answers. Because the way our world is going, people don't even know what the questions are going to be. People don't know what the problems tomorrow are going to be. And when you don't know the problem, what's the point of knowing what the answer was last year? It's of no use. So I think what you might want to do also is to remind yourself of the good things you've done. So you start feeling a little more confident about yourself. You've got to feel sure. You know, I think the first person who rejects us in an interview situation is not the interviewer, it's us ourselves. We go in thinking, I'm not good enough. I'm not sure I'll get this job. मुझे मालूम नहीं है, मेरे पास experience नहीं है. Forget all of that. The fact that you got called for an interview means you're now in on a even, with an even chance as anybody else who's going for the interview. So don't kid yourself by saying, "Arey yaar, I don't know anybody. This company mein, influence se kaam chalta hai. I don't know the boss over here, or mere grades अच्छे नहीं थे, or I don't have experience." So we are deselling ourselves even before we get into the interview situation. So don't let that happen, I think. Okay, and someone who's got 15 years of experience, you should have really no problem. Don't just imagine that you're going there to have fun. You're talking to them. And very often, and I've seen this, when I've interviewed people, many times, what has impressed me is not the answers from the person, but the questions that the other person might have asked us. Okay, because those questions showed, my goodness, here is someone who's thinking about what's going on here. Here's someone who's thought about my business. So maybe a good idea for you to try and read up on the company, on what they're doing, what they're up to, what would you do differently, rather than constantly saying, me, mujhe kya malum hai, I must answer that question properly. If they ask me this, what will I say? So don't worry too much about it. Take the pressure off.
So I'll also add to what Prakash said. Prakash, I'll just hijack 2 minutes of this session. Of
course, you should.
Because I've interviewed a lot of people. Listen, about a couple of years back, I went to a university to recruit B-school candidates. And there was one candidate who came in, and when I asked him, what do you read? He says, I read economic times and I follow the stock markets. And basically, he got me sucked into that thing. And when I asked questions, he could not answer it.
Yeah.
He didn't know what the was. He didn't know any stock price movement. Every single movie and how much they've collected. He got selected. Yeah. He's been working with you for the last 5 years. Last 2 years. Right?
Yeah. Great comment.
So I think you need to be honest. Guide him towards your.
Yeah. And I think you've got to be yourself, Mahesh. I think it's a great point you make. You've got to be yourself. Many of us try to be this ideal person and give all the right answers. And, the classic one of saying, "Main economic times padhta hu," or I like to read. And the last book I read was, 5 years ago or 10 years ago. It doesn't work. So you've got to be telling people what you're really passionate about and getting them to believe in it. Makes sense.
So there is another question from Nagaraj Iruvanti. Is current crisis. So the question is from Nagaraj Iruvanti, Prakash. His question is, what are the new opportunities that you see that will open up after the current crisis? And previously, in the last 3-4 days, when we actually spoke to some specialists, they were saying that the health industry would really spur up, and you will actually have a lot more investments going into the health industry, so to say. Where do you see this? And I would want you to take off your hat of a motivational speaker and put on your hat of a investor and tell us what you would be looking at or what kind of industries you would be looking at.
Yeah. I think what's happened in this crisis is that it's forced us all to reevaluate what our lives are all about and what do we really want, what do we really need, what's really important, what's meaningful. So from an industry standpoint, clearly healthcare, health, hygiene, medicine and allied industry, I think they will all become, far more important as we try and, as we suddenly discover that all the money in the world and all the education can't really prevent you from this one little virus. And I think that's going to mean that a lot more dollars will flow into research, into medicine, into healthcare. And surely, I think those will all be sectors which will see a lot of traction. But I think that's not the only one. I think it's going to change fundamentally the way we live, the way we consume. So I'd like to believe that we will all start doing a lot more things on our own. And what I mean by that is that therefore you will be doing, how can I simulate the classroom of a school inside the bedroom of a home? And therefore technology and tools that help us to allow individuals in isolation to experience what it was to have been in a social environment, I think will also become a big thing. And that I see that for education, I see that for entertainment. It will happen for, I think fitness programs. You will suddenly discover that, more people will want to get fit working out with a TV screen, which will replace that, gym instructor or trainer who they would see when they went into a gym. So the gym will come home, and technology and tools and people who can enable this, I think will all become extremely important. I think I was listening to someone who's a VC, and he says, when I look at investing in a business, I'm looking for people who have the ability to go into the future and envisage what the future looks like, solve for problems over there, and then come back into the present and create those solutions. And I think that's a good way to look at it. I think a lot of our education, typically our jobs, have tended to be focused on the past. We chase what's already happened. We chase what's already become the big thing. Whereas the future really will be about being able to go into the future and understand what might be. And I think there was I think it's a line attributed sometimes to Michael Jordan. I'm not sure if he actually said it, but he's, when they asked him what makes him such a great basketball player and how is it that he managed to be, most valuable player, his answer was interesting. He said apparently that everybody goes where the ball is. I go where the ball will be. And that makes all the difference. And I think for all of us, we need to try and ask ourselves, where will the ball be, and try and get there.
Oh, brilliant example. So there's another question from Utkarsh and a similar question from Seek. The question is, can you explain the importance of presence of mind with a few examples if you can?
Yeah. Being able to explain it right now with an example itself would mean showing some presence of mind. Yeah. So I think a lot of it about presence of mind is really feeling comfortable about yourself, not being, not allowing your mind to think too much about other people, the future, and trying to say, what will they think? Or is this the right answer? If you don't let that happen, you manage to stay in the present, you might find that, hey, that's a simple way to kind of ensure that you get it right. And since we talked about interviews, Mahesh, just a minute ago, what do you do? As someone who's hired a lot of salespeople in my life, I think this has often been, one of the questions used to be that, and if you've ever gone for a sales interview, they'll tell you this, the boss sits over there and says, okay, sell me this pen, so that's a standard question that often people get asked. No, so you're supposed to say this is the world's best pen and all of that. So the story goes that there was this guy who said, he was interviewing a guy, and I think this was one of those HP or kind of companies. And he says, okay, he takes his laptop and he tells that candidate, sell me this laptop, So the candidate says, sure. And he takes the laptop in his hand and says, I want to start from the beginning. So he walks out of the room as if to knock on the door and come back inside. And he goes out. And now the boss is inside waiting for him. And the guy doesn't come in. And when he goes out and he says, where's that guy? He says, that guy's gone. He says, where is he gone? He says, I don't know. He's left. I thought he's finished the interview. So now this guy calls up and says, where did you go? He says, yeah, you want the laptop? You have to buy it from me now. So I think it's a little bit about being confident about yourself, being able to think on your feet. Um, Usually this comes when you are in a good place, when you're not anxious, when you're not too worried. It also helps for you to not take yourself too seriously. And one of the problems many of us have is we get too caught up in ourselves and we take ourselves too seriously. So just relax, chill, try and laugh a little bit, try and smile, and you might find that, this presence of mind, which looked elusive, will start coming back to you.
This is a question from Subhash Parab. His question is, presently I'm working with a company but with unrelated line, right? And I'm not prepared for it. Is it the time to study further, or what should we do?
Yeah. So I want to hark back to an answer that I gave earlier, which is that in my life, I have found that when you take a decision which is a negative vote, I don't like this, so I'm going to do this. I think those decisions are generally not very good decisions, because at that moment they look like the best thing there is. I hate what I'm doing, so almost everything else looks better. So what will typically happen is you'll go from one problem to another, to another, to another, and you won't really have found happiness or success. So I think when you say that I'm working in a line that's unrelated and I don't like it, so I want to go and study. No, my decision to go and study is unrelated to what I'm doing right now. Whether I like what I'm doing right now or I hate it, I need to figure out whether I want to study and whether it makes sense. And I'd urge you that sometimes, grit, this ability to stick it out when the going gets tough, the ability to do things even when you don't enjoy them, I think it also makes us stronger. It makes us better. And therefore, if you're in a job which you don't enjoy too much, try and ask yourself, why cop out so easily? Look at the number of people who would have given an arm and a leg to get their job. Look at the number of people today who are cursing themselves because of this crisis, my offer in that company has got rejected. You're lucky, you're already there, and you're talking about throwing it away. So don't throw it away. I think stick it out, make it work, show that you can survive in a difficult place, and then look to try and move out. Mahesh, there was a gymnast who apparently won a bronze medal, and when they asked her how she did it, I think her answer could be interesting for all of us. And when they asked her how she did it, she said, simple: I practiced whenever I felt like it, and I practiced when I didn't feel like it. And I think many of us are halfway to winning a medal in the Olympic Games. We do things when we feel like it. Success comes when you push yourself to do things even when you don't feel like it. And I think that's a good challenge to take for all of us.
In fact, Prakash, I'll just add to that again, 30 seconds. When I see in the current COVID crisis, when I see people cycling 2,000 kilometers, walking 1,500 kilometers, it is, where did they get the strength from? Where did they get this energy from? Their endurance, their grit, their courage, their conviction that they will be able to see through the whole thing. That amazes me. But then that's what it is. When people are pushed to a corner, the only way they react is one way, isn't it?
True. And I think it's important for all of us to therefore have an end goal in sight. We are all like, to take your example, Mahesh, we are getting onto the cycle and saying, yaar, ye seat comfortable nahi hai. I'm going to throw the cycle away. Or, arey, cycle mein wo bell kharab ho gaya hai, so I'm not going to take the cycle. If you know that you need to get to those 200 kilometers away, and it's a matter of life and death, and if you know that for you, life is all about getting there, you will get there. The cycle tires can go punctured, the rods can break, the bell will stop working, the brake may not work, the pedals will break. But you know what? You won't break. You will survive it. And I think that's what life is all about. It's not about those little comforts and those little things which are not working in our lives. It's about how do you respond to it? How do you make yourself stronger so that you can overcome those adversities that might come up?
This is a question from Divya Gupta. What do you look in while hiring a sales manager? Or how would you frame a question in a sales interview?
Okay, Divya. If I'm looking to hire a sales manager, what I'm really looking for is what kind of a person is this with people who are not as good as he might be. Okay. So I'm typically looking for, and I don't always get the answer easily, but I'm really looking for someone. I'm almost imagining that how does he talk to the Uber driver? You know, how does he talk to the lift man? How does he talk to a waiter in a restaurant? Does he look like the kind of person who, there are two kinds of people. One chap who go into a restaurant and order, black coffee for himself and green tea for someone else, and the waiter gets it mixed up, he'll scream and say, Kya, itna bhi nahi malum hai tumhe, kaise aadmi ho tum, that's one possible. And the other is the kind of guy who's able to put his hand on the waiter's shoulder and say, yaar, I want, mujhe coffee pila yaar, sabse badhiya coffee pilayega na tu, right? And the guy will still get you the same coffee, but he'll get at you with a smile on his face and say, yaar, bade dinon ke baad aapke jaisa aadmi mila hai mujhe. I'm looking for those kind of people who are good with other people who may not be, may not be of the same level or the same standing. We are all very good with people who we see as better than us. Yes, sir. No, sir. 3 bags full, sir. We are very respectful towards them. But how do you deal with people who are those ordinary folks out there? If I could, since you asked a question, I'd probably maybe start with a question which says, when you take an Uber ride, of course, it's been a while since all of us did that now, but when you take an Uber ride, when you finish, what happens? You rate the driver. Yeah. What does the driver do? He rates you.
Right.
So he's deciding what kind of a person are you without any stake in you, doesn't have any, but he still sees you and he's rating you. So one of the questions I'd probably ask first is, Uber score kya hai tera yaar? Bata. It might give you a good indicator of what kind of a person this is.
So this is the question I'm now, asking a couple of my own questions, Prakash, because
sure.
In my opinion, this one is being heard by a lot of institutions and people who are managing the institutions also. You actually have a crisis where people's purchasing power might be in question. The amount of money that they can invest in certain things are in question. And then you have the institutions on the other side who are who have to ensure that the institution runs viable, delivers the right education with the right quality of people, and so on and so forth. Is there anything that the institutions can do to enable students who are good but can't afford? And I'm not just talking about scholarships and all. How does the cost of education play between viability, profitability, profiteering, and the other side, which is student affordability and so on?
So I think clearly when it comes to education, you've got to stop at two of those words that you use. So you've got to worry about viability, you've got to worry about profitability. And I certainly think you shouldn't be looking at profiteering if that's the word that you just described for what some of these institutions might be doing. I've always believed that education probably plays a bigger role in the building of a nation and the building of its people than perhaps anything else in that country. And it's a pity that education doesn't quite get the resources that it needs, doesn't quite get the attention it needs. When I look at how little school teachers, for example, get paid, I feel sorry for them because I think they do a lot of work and I think they have a huge role in molding the character of a country. And to think that their rewards are so small, I think it feels a little sad. So in times like these, what should an education institution do? I would probably say it's a good time to remind yourself of the reason why you exist. And therefore find ways to constantly make it easier for the right people to get access to this education. And while you said, scholarships may not be the only thing, so maybe it's not the only thing, but perhaps there's a way for institutions, at least, and I'm just saying that nothing stops an institution from saying, this year, I'm going to waive my fee and say, you pay me 3 years later. Yeah. If I can afford to do it, if I can find a way to kind of manage my cash flows, if I can make it viable, because I think if nothing else, 20 years from now, 30 years from now, people will remember that here's an institution which actually waived that fee. And I dare say that there will be a couple of people who were deserving kids who may not have come to the school this year because they couldn't afford it. But because you took that step to help them, they will be the kids who 30 years from now, as billionaires, will probably be giving grants and giving you money to say, hey, you know what? At the time when I needed help, you were there to help me. And I'd like to pay back now. I think the problem for us is that too many educational institutions see all this as commerce, and it's almost as if I can sell one more seat or I can sell one more ticket or there is a certain margin to be made on the kid. Maybe a good time to forget that for a bit and try and do what you think is the right thing I think the commerce and the economics will take care of itself later on.
And Prakash, just another, because a lot of questions are coming on the study abroad piece. Would you have any opinion about how the study abroad is going to pan out in the next few years?
I would probably say that increasingly people will look for ROI in their education, and they will quickly discover that going abroad is offering very, very poor ROI. If you think about it, why did so many candidates or so many students go out and study? I think it was not because the course or the curriculum itself perhaps was significantly better than what might have been on offer in India. It was often about being able to live in a foreign country, to experience a foreign country, and potentially perhaps to stay on and work and learn in a new environment. I think a lot of that is going to change, and the probability of that change, of your being able to even go and study over there, or God forbid, find a job out there, I think it's going to become very, very difficult. And in that situation, I'm not sure if parents will spend, $50,000 to put their kid into an American university and then discover that, the kid is in the bedroom taking online classes from an institute in some other part of the world. I think it just will not work. I also feel that in general, what COVID will do for all of us is make us hyper local. I think the whole idea of, being cordoned off, finding that there is a barricade in your tehsil or in your village or in your city or in the suburb where you live, and that everything that's available within that is all that you have access to. I think it might just change the way we all look at it. And I dare say people will start saying that, if you see what happened to migrant labor in some of our big cities, the heart-wrenching stories, I think it'll take a lot for us to get them back into these big cities. And I think increasingly people are going to say, I will stay where I am, do waqt ki roti mil jayegi, and I'll be happy with it, and I'll try and make a living over here. So I think increasingly we'll all start saying, being close to family, being close to where I am, being safer in an environment, I will try and find a livelihood here rather than leave everything and try and go off into a foreign country.
Last two questions, Prakash. And this question is very interesting, so I'm putting it to you, though I actually wanted to ask my own question. This is from Amit Singh. He says, how politics is important to survive in the corporate life? Or rather, in short, his question is, how to win in office politics? So survival within the organization and office politics, how important is it?
Hey, Amit, thanks for asking that question, Amit. And I'm going to give you a very, very hard, straight from my heart kind of answer. So I have always believed that the world outside is what you see inside your head. Okay. And I have not been a great believer of this thing that office politics and, Chanakya chahiye, and you need to be almost like a smart aleck and decide how do you pull the other person down. I don't think that's required. And I want you, I don't know, Amit, if you're going to enter workspace, I hope you haven't already been there. And if you're in an organization, I hope it's not the last one that I hope you'll move and find that it's not the case. I don't think organizations are all filled with politics and you need to be politically savvy to get ahead in life. I think increasingly, and I'm saying this as someone who's not just worked in large companies, but even as I look at smaller businesses, I think there is a desire to get good people to do an honest day's work and be rewarded fairly for it. And increasingly young people, and Amit, I'm assuming you're one of those young people I'm talking to right now. I think young people have no tolerance for all of this. And if they find that they're in a political environment, they're saying, you know what, the money may be good, the job may be good, title may be good. I like the food in the cafeteria, but I'm out of here because I don't like the politics here. And I think people are making those choices. This is no longer about the good old days where you got a job and said, my baap, jo bhi hoga, main uske saath hi rahunga, I will retire from this job. That's not the case anymore. And I think young people have the ability to change the work environment. Okay. I can tell you this, that increasingly the norm is, it's not that all organizations are political. And even if there are a few, they are waiting for people like you, Amit, to come in and change the world. And you've got to believe that, yaar, main badal dalunga is sabko, yaar. This is not how organizations should be. And I'm confident that I can change it. And that's how you've got to be looking at it.
Last question, Prakash, is from Suresh. He's asking you a question, which is, when are we getting your next book?
Suresh, hopefully this year, end of the year, there should be a book out. unless like everything else, like your exams and those offers and everything else, if this also gets delayed. But I'm guessing that things will come back to normal. So by the end of the year, there is a book coming out. So watch this space.
So he seems to have read your other earlier three books, and he advises students. Also, my personal advice to all students is to buy Prakash's three books. These books are not only unleash a leader in you, but also help you to become a great person. So that's what
My
Suresh
goodness.
says. So
Thank you so much for
yeah.
those kind words, Suresh. Really appreciate that. And and to all those of you out there, all I'd say is this: there's a lot of help out there available to you, but believe in yourself. Believe. I think there's only one like you. And, it's unlikely that we think that the guy up there, whoever is that God, he's a good manufacturer. Yeah, uska defective piece banata nahi hai wo. So we are all good pieces. It's just a matter of finding the right slots for ourselves, believing in ourselves. I think there are no shortcuts. One of the problems we all have is we start thinking, do I really have to work so hard to make a living, or do I really have to be so hard to be successful? Surely there's a shortcut. Truth is, there are no shortcuts. You can't buy success on a credit card. Okay. Most of us think, yaar, mujhe wo naukri de do, then I'll work hard. Give me admission into that engineering college, then I'll work hard. Doesn't work. Yeah. You got to work hard first, and then the reward will follow. You can't buy now, pay later. You got to pay now and hope that you'll get it later. And if you do that, I'm sure you'll be successful. Don't, I must tell you, I'll give you, if I have another 30 seconds, Mahesh, I use something with me. I have it's called a 90-year human life in weeks. Okay. And I pulled it off my softboard over here to show it to you, because it's what it does is got these tiny squares. Each square is a week, and it goes all the way up to 90 years. Okay. The first thing it tells you is, hey, you're talking to an old man now. Yeah. I'm past my half life. And that's not a great thought. But as every week passes, I tick it off, and I'm telling myself, gosh, man, what did I do last week? What did I do this week to make my dreams come true? I've got 100 things I want to do. I want to live to be 150 for a start. I want to write a lot more books. I want to touch a lot more people. I want to do a lot more. But every week that passes, it tells you, gosh, you're running out of time. And it's up to you to make the most of that time. And guess what? I've just put another color for what is the COVID period over here. All right.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I could see that.
That's a small bit. Yeah. In a 90-year life, that's a very small blip. So stop worrying about the fact that because of this, my life has changed. Offer nahi mila, that the placement got cancelled, or something else happened. Exams are not happening. Don't worry. It's a minor, small speed breaker in the highway in your life. So don't worry about it. Stay positive, and I'm sure you'll do well in your life. That's what I've done.
Prakash, concluding comments towards the institutions and the student, because institutions, they have to deal with students who might come with their own problems and sets of problems in terms of money to be invested and so on and so forth, and they have to deal with the country, and then students who are dealing with a lot of uncertainty. On both sides, can you just have your concluding comments?
I think I'll start with the institutions first. I think it's a great opportunity for institutions to try and take the high ground and demonstrate that we are in the business of building character, building people, building a nation. We are not in the business of making money. Okay. And I think if you get focused on building character, building people, building a nation, the money will come. Okay. And therefore, this is not a time to worry too much about saying, how do I, is there an opportunity for me to make more money here? It's also perhaps an opportunity for me to try and say that don't look back on your past. Okay. I think that something like a COVID-19 will hit the reset button for people, for businesses. And therefore, it might be a great opportunity for a young, new institution to suddenly become the leader in using technology in delivering education, perhaps in delivering courses which are relevant to the future. Okay. So it's no longer about saying we have 150 years of history with us, or we have 50 years of history, and we've been ranked number 1 for 13 years. None of that matters, because the future is going to be different. So I think it's a great opportunity for institutions to try and ask themselves, how are we going to change? What are we going to change? What will we do differently given what's happened right now? And I think the winner will really be the institution that shows that agility to look for new solutions, new ways of delivering education, new curriculums, new courses, a whole new way of perhaps educating people. I think that's where the opportunity might be for them. And when it comes to individuals and to all the people listening in on this call, I'd probably say this. Remember this, everything happens in life for a purpose. Okay? And you're lucky, you are going through something. Our forefathers went through wars, went through partitions. Think of those people, who might have gone out and had to go for a war and, never came back. And God forbid, those days they didn't even have the benefit of being able to send a WhatsApp message, say I'm okay, or to do a Zoom call and say I'm all right. None of those were available to them. But they survived it. Okay? And it made them stronger. And I'm a big believer that failure, adversity, crisis, these make us stronger. Okay? And I think the question you've got to ask yourself is, how am I becoming better for what's happening right now? How am I getting myself to be stronger thanks to what's happening right now? If you're not doing that, I think you're doing yourself a disservice. Okay? Don't worry too much about, oh my goodness, is this the end of the world? Am I ruined? Will everything be lost away? Don't worry about it. I think you've got a future ahead of you. You've got many, many, many years ahead. I love this little Charlie Brown comic strip where, this girl Lucy is looking out of a window and she says, hey, Charlie, come here, look out there. I see the sun and I see birds and I see flowers. What do you see? So Charlie Brown comes to the window and he says, I see fingerprints and smudges and insects. And she says, no, Charlie Brown, windows are not for looking at, they're for looking through. Okay. And I think the mistake we make is when we are in a crisis, we are looking at that damn crisis saying, Arey baap re, lut gaye, barbaad ho gaye, this is the end of the world. Don't worry about it. Look through it and look into the future and say, man, what has this taught me, which will make me a better person? What has this taught me, which will make me a far more valuable person in the world in which we live? And I think that's really the opportunity ahead of all of us. As someone said, life is not about being dealt a great hand of cards. It's about how do you play those cards. It's not about what happens to you, but it's about how you respond to it. So I think take control of yourself, stay positive, and I'm sure there's a great future ahead for all of us.
Prakash, thank you so much. It's been a real pleasure talking to you, as always. And I'll keep, bothering you, I think, because it's one of the better sessions I've done. And I'll keep bothering you because I think students require some kind of an advice from people like you as the results come in, as rejections happen, and so on and so forth. So I'll keep bothering you if you don't mind.
Thank you so much, Mahesh, for having me here. It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you. And I do hope for everyone who's been listening, and I hope they've enjoyed it and found it useful. But hey, thank you so much for the opportunity. Really appreciate it, Mahesh.
Thanks so much.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody.